My name is Mike, and for the past 35 years, I have been studying stories that reveal deeper truths about human nature and justice. Today, I want to share with you a story that will change how you see power and revenge forever. The billionaire invited the humble housekeeper as a cruel joke. She arrived like royalty, and everyone was in absolute shock when they found out who she really was. The grand ballroom of the Bennett estate in Manhattan exploded with malicious laughter when Emma Parker descended the crystal staircase wearing a gown that cost more than the annual salary of most people present. It was not laughter of admiration. It was pure, cruel mockery. "Look who decided to grace us with her presence," Charles Bennett whispered to his guests, raising his glass of vintage champagne. "Our dear housekeeper, Emma." Emma was 37 years old and never imagined she would one day step foot in that ballroom as a guest, even if it was meant as a joke. For 3 years, she had cleaned every corner of that mansion. Always invisible, always silent, watching those wealthy people treat each other with fake pleasantries while treating her like she was invisible. The invitation had arrived 4 days earlier, delivered with a cruel smile she knew all too well. "Charity auction on Friday night," Charles said, handing her the gold envelope. "Dress code is black tie elegance. You surely have something appropriate in your closet, do you not?" The laughter of his friends echoed through the hallway. It was an obvious trap, an attempt to humiliate her publicly, to put her in her place in front of New York high society. Charles had even invited society photographers to document what he called a teaching moment. "Let me make a wager," Charles said to his wife Diana as Emma polished the silver the day before. $100,000 says she does not have the courage to show up. And if she does, she will be our entertainment for the evening. Diana laughed wickedly. "You are terrible, Charles. The poor woman will probably show up in something borrowed and feel so out of place that she will leave within 20 minutes. But Charles Bennett did not know two fundamental things about Emma Parker. First, she had grown up in halls like that long before she had to clean them to survive. Second, some storms do not destroy you. They just teach you how to dance in the rain. As she walked through the hall under the mocking glances, Emma kept her posture straight, and her gaze calm like someone carrying secrets that could turn that world upside down. Her steps were confident, calculated, as if each movement were part of a long, rehearsed performance. "My goodness, she actually came," whispered Helen Morrison, wife of a congressman, to her friend. "And look how she is dressed. Where did she get that gown?" "She probably rented it and will pay for it in 12 installments," replied Grace Thompson, daughter of a media mogul, trying to disguise her own insecurity with cruelty. How embarrassing. What none of those people knew was that Emma had not bought, borrowed, or rented that dress. She had simply gone back into her own past to retrieve it, a past that Charles would have done anything to erase if he had known it existed. Charles approached her, his chest puffed out with arrogance, surrounded by his billionaire friends. His confidence was sky high. After all, he had orchestrated this as a public display of power and control. "Emma, what a delightful surprise. I never doubted you would come. After all, when a person like you receives an invitation to an event like this." "A person like me," Emma repeated, her calm voice cutting through the air like sharp silk. "Go ahead, Charles. Finish your sentence." For a brief moment, something in her tone made Charles hesitate. There was a strength there that did not match the submissive woman he knew from the halls of the mansion. But arrogance quickly took over again. "Well, you know someone who does not normally attend this kind of gathering. You must be feeling quite overwhelmed by all this sophistication." Emma smiled. Not a submissive or nervous smile, but something dangerously serene that made some nearby guests begin laughing instinctively. Overwhelmed, she repeated softly, her eyes meeting his with an intensity that made Charles take a step back without realizing it. "No, Charles, I am feeling exactly where I have always belonged." The silence that followed lasted only a few seconds, but it was enough for the atmosphere of the party to change completely. There was something about the way Emma spoke, the way she moved, the way she occupied the space that defied all expectations those people had about who she should be. Charles cleared his throat, trying to regain control of the situation. Well, I hope you enjoy the evening. I am sure it will be educational for you. Oh, I am sure it will be educational for all of us, Emma replied, her gaze slowly sweeping over the group of guests, as if cataloging each face for future reference. What those privileged people did not know was that Emma carried with her a secret so explosive that it would turn that night of planned humiliation into the greatest lesson on prejudice and underestimating people that Manhattan had ever witnessed. Charles was having more fun than he had imagined. Emma had not run away in embarrassment as he had expected. She remained there with that strangely confident posture that was beginning to bother him in a way he could not explain. Everyone, Charles announced loudly, tapping a silver spoon against his crystal glass to get the attention of all the guests. I would like to introduce our special guest tonight, Emma, our dedicated housekeeper. Laughter echoed through the hall like cruel waves. Cell phone cameras began to flash as socialites took photos to post on their social media accounts with mocking captions. Charles, Diana murmured beside him, pretending concern. Do you not think you are being a little harsh? Harsh? Charles laughed loudly. I am giving her the opportunity of a lifetime. When else would someone like her ever get the chance to attend an event like this? Emma stood motionless in the center of the room, all eyes fixed on her. But instead of the embarrassment they expected to see, there was something unsettling about her expression. A calmness that seemed to come from someone who had weathered far worse storms. Helen Morrison approached with her group of friends, all wearing poisonous smiles. Emma dear, tell me, how long did it take you to choose that gown? It must have been so challenging to find something suitable. Actually, Emma replied with a composure that made Helen hesitate. This dress has a very special history. It belonged to my mother. Her mother, Grace Thompson, laughed nastily. And where did her mother get a dress like that? At some fancy consignment shop. Emma smiled, but there was something dangerous in that smile. My mother wore this dress the last time she was in a ballroom like this. That was 25 years ago, when she was still Emma Parker Bennett. The silence that followed was deafening. Some people ceased talking, realizing that something important was being revealed. Charles, who had been laughing with his close friends, turned slowly. What did you say? Parker Bennett, Emma repeated, her voice cutting through the air like a sharp blade. It is funny how some people choose to conveniently forget their own family history. Charles' face began to pale. Diana instinctively grabbed her husband's arm, sensing that something was terribly wrong. You are delusional, Charles said, but his voice came out less firm than he intended. I do not know what game you are playing, but this is not a game, Charles. Emma took a step toward him, and several guests instinctively backed away. It is history, our history. The history you tried to erase when you decided it was more convenient to pretend that certain people in our family never existed. The cell phone cameras continued to record, but now for a completely different reason. Whispers began to spread through the room like wildfire. Diana pulled Charles by the arm. What is she talking about? She is lying, Charles replied, but his hands were shaking slightly. She is a deranged employee trying to get attention. Emma reached into her small purse and pulled out an object that made several guests gasp. It was a ring, not just any ring, but the traditional Bennett family signet ring, engraved with the family crest, and featuring the distinctive emerald that had been passed down for generations. This ring, Emma said, holding it up for all to see, was given to my mother by her father, Robert Bennett. My grandfather, the man you told your children died without an heir. Charles was now visibly shaken. Where did you get this? How dare you steal? Steal? Emma laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. Charles, you cannot steal something that is rightfully yours by birthright. Helen Morrison, who had been watching open-mouthed, whispered to her friend, "My God, do you think she is telling the truth?" "Impossible," Grace murmured, but her voice no longer sounded so confident. "Charles would have told us if he had a cousin." Emma heard the whisper and turned to them. "Cousin? No, dear, I am not Charles' cousin." She paused dramatically, looking directly at Charles. "I am his half-sister." The room exploded in murmurs and muffled exclamations. Charles looked as if he had been struck by lightning. "This is ridiculous," he shouted, but his voice cracked. "My father would never. You are making this up." "Robert Bennett had an affair with my mother, Catherine. For 6 years," Emma continued relentlessly. "She was the family art consultant. When she found out she was pregnant with me, your father promised to take care of us, and he kept his promise until he died." Diana now had one hand over her mouth, staring between Emma and Charles, as if watching a disaster unfold in slow motion. "You," Emma said, pointing directly at Charles, "decided it would be easier to pretend we never existed. You cut off our support, sold the house your father bought for my mother, and left us in complete poverty." "I had no obligation to," Charles began, but Emma interrupted him. "You had no obligation to take care of your father's family. Interesting philosophy, considering you inherited 100% of a fortune that should have been divided between us." The weight of Emma's words was slowly sinking into the minds of the guests. Several began to move away from Charles, as if physical proximity could contaminate them with scandal. "Prove it," Charles said desperately. "Anyone can make up a story and produce a ring." Emma smiled again, and this time there was something predatory in her expression. "Oh, Charles, do you really think I came here without proof?" She took her phone and motioned to someone near the entrance. "They can come in now." 3 people entered the hall at that moment that would change the lives of everyone present forever. The first was Amanda Davis, New York most respected investigative journalist. The second was David Lee, an attorney specializing in inheritance law. The third made Charles Bennett stagger as if he had been punched in the stomach. "Dr. Williams," Diana murmured, recognizing the family private physician. "What are you doing here?" Dr. Williams, who had treated Robert Bennett during the last years of his life, walked to the center of the room. His hands were shaking, but his voice was steady. 25 years ago, I was forced to sign a falsified death certificate. Robert Bennett did not die of natural causes. He was slowly poisoned with digitalis over a period of months." The hall erupted in muffled cries. Amanda Davis raised her hand. "Please keep your phones away. This is an official confession being recorded for legal purposes." Charles was visibly desperate, sweating. "You are insane, Williams. My father died of heart failure." "Your father found out about the money you had been embezzling from the company for years," Dr. Williams continued relentlessly. "He had changed his will to include Emma, and was about to report you to the authorities when he began showing strange symptoms." Emma remained silent, tears of relief in her eyes. Finally, after 25 years, someone was telling the truth. David Lee opened his briefcase and took out an official document. This tissue sample was tested last week by an independent laboratory. The digitalis levels were fatal. "You are making this up," Charles shouted, but his voice was completely uncontrolled. "It is a conspiracy to destroy me." Amanda Davis stepped forward. "Mr. Bennett, I have transcripts of 6 conversations you had with Dr. Williams between 1998 and 1999, where you threatened to ruin him professionally." Emma finally spoke, her voice cutting through the chaos like a knife. "Charles, you did not just kill our father. You stole 25 years of my life." "I did not kill anyone." Charles pointed his finger in all directions. "You are all lying." "Then explain this," said Emma, connecting her phone to the mansion sound system. A recording began to play. Charles' voice was unmistakable. "Williams, you are going to keep your mouth shut about anything unusual you found in the old man's blood. If you open your mouth, I guarantee you will never work as a doctor again. And as for that woman and her illegitimate daughter, they will have to fend for themselves." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the people who had defended Charles now avoided him as if he were radioactive. Diana stared at her husband in horror. "Charles, you really did this." 25 years, Emma screamed, her composure breaking momentarily. 25 years of cleaning my own father's blood off the hands of his killer. Emma took a deep breath and regained her deadly calm. "You want to know how I got all this evidence? I did not come to work here by accident. I applied specifically for this position. I spent 3 years preparing, gaining access to the house, collecting evidence." Charles tried one last desperate gambit. "Even if all that is true, it does not change anything. The inheritance was distributed years ago." David Lee smiled for the first time. "Actually, Mr. Bennett, when there is evidence of murder, all assets can be redistributed according to the original will, and we have a copy of Robert Bennett's actual will." Emma approached Charles, who was leaning against the wall like a cornered animal. "Do you know what my biggest mistake was, Charles? It was believing that you would change on your own." "Please," Charles whispered. All arrogance evaporated. "Diana, the children, this will destroy our family." "You destroyed our family the moment you chose money over justice." Charles collapsed into an armchair, completely defeated. His transformation from arrogant billionaire to exposed criminal had taken less than 3 hours. Emma looked at Charles one last time. He was broken, but that was only the beginning. What Charles did not realize, and would discover in the worst possible way in the next few hours, was that Emma had spent years gathering evidence not only about her father's death, but about all the financial crimes, blackmail, and corruption he had committed over the decades, weaving a web of justice so meticulous that his downfall would be spectacularly complete. The next 3 hours turned the most exclusive auction in Manhattan into the biggest scandal New York high society had ever witnessed live. Charles was now sitting on the floor of the ballroom, his back against the wall, watching his entire life unravel in real time. Amanda Davis had connected her laptop to the mansion projection system, and documents, photos, and recordings appeared on the giant screen for all the guests to see. "This is a bank transfer of $300,000 from Charles Bennett's personal account to Dr. Williams, dated 5 days after Robert Bennett's death," Amanda narrated as the image appeared on the screen. The memo on the transfer reads, "Silence has a price." Diana was now on the other side of the room, as far away from her husband as possible, crying silently as she processed 25 years of lies. "And this," Amanda continued, "is a recording of Charles talking to his accountant about how to hide the company embezzlement." Charles' voice echoed through the room. "I need you to make the numbers work. If anyone finds out I have taken out $30 million over the last 8 years, I am finished. Blame it on market volatility, expansion costs, whatever." Helen Morrison whispered to her friend, "My God, he stole from his own company." Emma remained in the center of the room, calm as the eye of a hurricane, watching each revelation systematically destroy the life of the man who had murdered her father. David Lee approached with a new folder. "Mr. Bennett, in addition to the criminal charges, I must inform you that Miss Parker is filing a $75 million civil suit against you for wrongful death and misappropriation of inheritance." 75 million. Charles looked up with glazed eyes. "I do not have 75 million. "No," Emma said softly. "But your company is worth 180 million, and half of it has always been mine by right." Amanda Davis continued the devastating presentation. "We also have evidence that Charles blackmailed at least 7 local politicians, bribed 4 judges, and diverted charity funds to personal accounts." Each new revelation drew gasps of horror from the guests. People who had arrived as Charles' friends now moved away as if he were radioactive. "Emma," Charles said in a broken voice, Please, you got what you wanted, this. Emma stepped forward and knelt in front of him, looking directly into his eyes. Charles, you killed our father. You stole my family, my inheritance, my dignity. You made me clean his blood off your hands for 3 years. I can make it up to you, he whispered desperately. There is no making up for 25 years of injustice, Emma replied with haunting calm. But there are consequences. Diana's phone rang. It was one of their children calling from university. Mom, is everything okay? Are they saying on the internet that Dad is a murderer? Diana looked at Charles with utter disgust. Your own children are finding out what kind of monster you are on social media. Charles tried to stand, but his legs gave way. Diana, please, the children. No, Diana screamed, silencing the entire room. You do not mention our children. You have shamed them forever. Dr. Williams approached Emma. Miss Parker, I must inform you that I have already contacted the authorities. Charles will be arrested within the hour for murder. Murder? Emma asked. Murder, fraud, blackmail, tax evasion. He will spend the rest of his life in prison. Emma turned to the guests who watched her with a mixture of admiration and terror. I want everyone to understand one thing. I did not do this for revenge. I did this for justice for all the people who have been trampled on by men like Charles Bennett. Helen Morrison approached hesitantly. Emma, we are so sorry. We did not know. You knew I was treated like I was subhuman, Emma replied firmly. You laughed. You participated. The only difference is that now you know I have more money than you. The sound of sirens began to echo from outside. The police had arrived. Charles looked at Emma one last time. You have destroyed my life. No, Emma said, standing up with all her dignity. You destroyed your own life the moment you chose evil. I just made sure the truth came out. As the police officers entered to arrest Charles, Emma walked out onto the balcony. Outside, dozens of reporters were waiting. Television cameras, photographers, journalists. The story had already spread. Diana approached her on the balcony. Emma, I really did not know anything. I know, Emma said gently. You were also a victim of his lies. What is going to happen now? Emma looked out at the city sparkling below. Now Diana, justice will finally be served, and maybe Manhattan will learn that class has nothing to do with a bank account. As Charles was led away in handcuffs by the police passing through the same hall where he had tried to humiliate her hours earlier, Emma felt something she had not felt in 25 years. Peace. What Charles would discover in the next few hours in jail was that Emma had planned every detail not only of his downfall, but also of the complete rebuilding of her own life, and that the Bennett empire now had a new heir who would make sure to use that power to protect exactly the kind of people he used to trample on. 8 months later, Emma Parker Bennett sat in Charles' former office, now completely renovated. The walls that once displayed trophies of arrogance now displayed certificates from charitable projects and photos of employees promoted from entry-level positions to executive positions. Charles had been sentenced to 30 years in prison without the possibility of parole. The charges included murder, corporate fraud, blackmail, and tax evasion. His personal fortune was completely confiscated to cover compensation to the victims. Emma was just one of many people he had harmed over the years. Miss Parker Bennett, said Jennifer, her new executive assistant, who had previously worked as a janitor in the building. Fortune magazine is here for the interview about the company transformation. Emma smiled. In 8 months, she had increased the company profits by 50% simply by treating employees like human beings. Fair wages, promotions based on actual merit, and a respectful work environment had created a level of productivity that Charles had never achieved with his toxic leadership. Diana had divorced immediately and moved out of state with her children. Before she left, she sought out Emma to apologize in person. You could have destroyed us completely, but you chose to protect my children. I will never forget your generosity. Children do not pay for their parents' sins, Emma had replied. They deserve the chance to be better people than he was. Dr. Williams now worked as a medical consultant for the company, offering free care to all employees. I never thought I would have the courage to do the right thing, he told Emma during a meeting. You taught me that it is never too late to find our dignity. Helen Morrison and Grace Thompson had tried to reach out to Emma in the weeks following the scandal, but she kept them at a polite distance. You laughed at me when you saw me as inferior. Now you want my friendship because you found out about my bank account. That says everything about you. Emma's story had gone viral worldwide. She received invitations to speak at universities about leadership and social justice, but she preferred to focus on the real work. I do not want to be famous for suffering, she explained in a rare interview. I want to be known for what I built afterward. The company now sponsored scholarships for employees' children, a micro-credit program for entrepreneurs in underserved communities, and had created the largest domestic violence support fund in New York. On a quiet afternoon, Emma received a letter from prison. It was from Charles. Emma, I know I do not deserve forgiveness, but I need you to know you taught me that the person I became was a monster. I spend every day trying to understand how I turned into someone capable of killing his own father for money. My children asked about you on their last visit. They want to meet the aunt who protected the family when their father failed. Emma kept the letter without replying. Forgiveness was a personal journey, but justice had already been served. During the interview with Fortune, the journalist asked, "Some people say your revenge was too cruel. What do you say to that?" "Revenge would have been to do to him what he did to me," Emma replied calmly. "Justice is ensuring that he pays for the crimes he committed and that other people do not suffer what I suffered. There is a fundamental difference between the two." "And what advice would you give to people facing similar injustices?" Emma looked out the window, watching employees having lunch in the company garden that now offered them respect and dignity. The best revenge is not to destroy those who have hurt you. It is to build something so great that the injustice you suffered becomes only the first chapter in a story of triumph. That night, Emma returned home, no longer to the small apartment where she had nurtured her dreams of justice, but to a comfortable house where she had adopted 3 orphan children who, like her, needed a second chance at life. As she helped the children with their homework, she thought of the father she had never really known, but whose blood ran through her veins. Robert Bennett would be proud to see that his daughter not only recovered what was stolen from her, but turned a company built on exploitation into a symbol of opportunity and dignity. Emma's real victory was not dethroning Charles. It was proving that when you build power based on justice rather than fear, that power multiplies and benefits everyone around you. Charles tried to humiliate a housekeeper and ended up discovering that he had underestimated an heiress. More importantly, he discovered that dignity cannot be bought, inherited, or stolen. It is earned through the choices we make when no one is looking. If this story of justice touched your heart, remember that good always wins when you have the right strategy, and that sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one everyone has chosen to ignore.